Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hi, this is Jan from New York. I love helping people keep more of their own hard-earned money. And welcome to the Save Money and More with Jan channel. And I still have to get used to the name. Every once in a while, I'll trip on my words. Every once in a while, I get reminiscent of how banking was when I was a little girl. Now, let's think about this. Okay, so I'm 65. So when I was a little girl was beyond half a century ago, which is like scary. Very scary to say, just saying. But I do have my fond memories of going to local banks, with my parents or whenever when I was a kid. And the rules were so much more stricter, like the hours of the day. For example, we had this local bank around the corner at the time, and it would open precisely 9 o'clock, not a minute earlier, not 1 minute earlier. And it would close precisely 3 o'clock. Bankers' hours, as they coined the phrase for that reason, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. I think it had something to do with the stock market hours. I think the stock market hours were also closing earlier at that time. Don't quote me on that, but I think it has something to do with the alignment of the stock market. Even when we would get out of school, school ended at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Today there's so much flexibility with banking, it isn't even a joke. And still people complain about things. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding. When I think about, let's say a person needed to cash a check, okay, and they missed getting into that bank by 3 o'clock by a minute or two. Too bad, so sad. Because check cashing places, if I'm not mistaken, at least in this area of the world, they really didn't come into being too frequently, I think, until the 1970s. But in the 60s, they were far and few between. Or let's say you needed to make a really important check deposit in the bank back in the day. If you were not there at before 3 o'clock, again, too bad, so sad. But there used to be this like really weird thing, like a hole in the wall practically with a little pull-out drawer that was called Night Depository. And I'm not quite sure if I personally would be very secure just sticking a check, pulling this thing open, and just throwing an envelope in the wall. There was no tapping into your name or your account number. Everything was heavily relied upon. And matter of fact, the old fashioned banking days, you got a thing called a bank book. Now, to tell you the truth, those were so cute, but they were manned by actual real people, real tellers that were totally responsible for adding all that information. Why am I bringing all this up? Well, a part of me was reminiscent of, strolling down memory lane in that arena for a minute. But a part of me also wants to clarify something. I am all for automated savings. Okay. So if you could set up a schedule with your bank, that occurs, close to the time you get your funding, whatever. And a good rule of thumb, I suggest, is maybe schedule it the day after or 2 days after. So you're absolutely sure your funds have arrived that hit your checking account and you pull some over to your savings account. I am like so for that. What I am skeptical about to this minute, I am not a fan of auto pay. This is what puts me back in the dark ages. I mean, banking wise and speaking wise, I still prefer to manually make my payment, whether I pick up the phone to do it or whatever. I still prefer that way. And you ask yourself why? Well, here's the reason why. Because let's say that there was an increase, maybe a sharp increase in one or two of your bills, and you didn't receive any notice or whatever, and it's taken out, it may just mess up your account. And then you are responsible for all of the late fees or whatever. So for me, no, I rather still some things I hang on to the old fashioned way. But then again, I did say to you that I am over 65. So I have one leg stuck in the dark ages and one leg totally in modern times. If I wasn't one leg in modern times, I wouldn't be sitting in a bowl of heart shaped candies on an internet platform giving you a message. So obviously, a part of me has graduated over. Let me also reminisce to you for a moment about certain skills that I learned in high school. One of the things, how many of you out there viewing have ever taken a stenography course? Let me know in the comments section below. So I took, typical academic course, but I had business electives as part of it. And so I definitely took stenography, shorthand, another word for it. So that was very interesting. Was it useful? Absolutely not. I did very well with it. It was different. It's like learning a new language, except in a written sense. Of course, it took back in the day typing, but I had the advantage because when I was a child, I was always fascinated by like equipment, typewriters, things of that nature, cameras, whatever. Ask any family member of mine, they'll say, "Oh yeah, Janet always." I mean, I couldn't wait to get my hands on a tape recorder. I would take a hairbrush and pretend it was a microphone at age 3. I kid you not. That's just me. But so the typing thing, I already knew how to type because I learned how to type by myself. So by the time I went to high school, that was like, okay, this is fun. Let's just get through the subject. But as far as like the stenography, it was good to learn it. There were two types of stenography. One was called Greg shorthand. That's the one I learned. And then there was a really older version that I heard about called Pittman. That really, really, I believe, went back into like the extreme dark ages. And like, okay, so we went through all this course and got great grades. And then by the time I went out to the business world, to the corporate life, those skills were not needed for the things that I was doing. They were not needed. But am I glad that I learned that extra skill? Absolutely yes. Even though it wasn't financially feasible, it's always good to get educated and to open up our mind to different things. For example, we also, like many people viewing, had to learn a second language in high school. Whatever you had the option of French and Spanish. Honestly, I also wish that they had the option of Italian. I would have taken that because that goes back to my relatives' ancestry, and culture. I would have really have enjoyed learning that. I chose to take Spanish, which was also a great option. In New York City, there are a lot of signs, especially written in Spanish, starting in the 1960s and 70s. Like on the subway, I'd be sitting on the subway looking at the advertisements, and I'd be reading signs in Spanish. And normally, in the past, I would not understand it. But then when I learned how to, do a little high school Spanish, well, I sort of like figured it out more or less. Do I remember a lot of it? Absolutely not. But I am glad that I did expand. Well, I just wanted to take you down a little bit of memory lane, but we shouldn't complain about banking these days. Banking today is easier than ever. And if you have any questions, always check. Go online and check if you don't understand, especially folks like myself. We're of a certain age. We were taught different things. Banks were open 9 to 3. Okay, you got a thing called a bank book. So many things have changed. So therefore, if you have questions, look them up. And we're so lucky that we could do it this way. Thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to click like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Really, click like is really important. Thank you. Bye-bye. Let's see.